Welcome to the Lost Tactician, where history and survival collide in the harshest theatres of human endurance. Today we venture into the frozen realm of the Norse warriors, where survival wasn't measured in days or weeks, but in generations. Imagine standing in a landscape where winter darkness swallows the sun for months, where Arctic winds scream across barren fjords with enough fury to strip flesh from bone, and where temperatures plummet so savagely that exposed skin freezes in minutes. This was the world of the Vikings, and yet they didn't merely survive these conditions, they conquered them. Their weapon wasn't steel or strategy alone, but something far more fundamental, the longhouse. This wasn't just shelter, this was a masterclass in ancient engineering, a structure so brilliantly conceived that it transformed the deadliest environment on Earth into home. Today, we're going to dissect the architectural genius that allowed an entire civilization to flourish where nature itself seemed determined to erase human existence. Picture yourself facing a construction challenge that would make modern engineers hesitate. You need to build a structure capable of housing 30 to 50 people, withstanding snow loads of several tons on the roof, resisting hurricane-force winds that barrel across open tundra, and doing it all without concrete, steel reinforcement, or power tools. The Vikings solved this problem with a post and lintel system so sophisticated that its principles still inform structural engineering today. The secret lay in two parallel rows of massive oak or pine posts, each carefully selected for strength and grain pattern, driven deep into the earth or mounted on foundation stones. These weren't random timber columns. They were precisely spaced load-bearing pillars that created what structural engineers would recognize as a clear-span framework. The horizontal beams, or lintels, sat atop these posts, forming the skeleton that would carry the immense weight of the turf-covered roof through the brutal winter months. The genius of this design wasn't just in its strength, but in its flexibility. Unlike rigid stone structures that crack under pressure, the Viking longhouse could actually move. The timber framework possessed a calculated degree of give, allowing the entire structure to sway slightly in extreme winds rather than resist them to the point of catastrophic failure. This principle, absorbing force rather than opposing it, is the same concept modern skyscrapers use to survive earthquakes and storms. The roof system itself was a marvel of adaptive design. Built with a steep pitch to shed snow before dangerous accumulation, it featured a curved profile that some scholars believe was deliberately ship-like, channeling wind over and around the structure rather than allowing it to hammer broadside against flat surfaces. Every joint was carefully crafted, using traditional Viking woodworking techniques that created interlocking connections far stronger than simple nailing could achieve. These weren't crude log cabins, they were precision-engineered survival machines. The central hearth was the beating heart of the longhouse, and its placement and design reveal an understanding of thermodynamics that seems almost impossible for a culture we often dismiss as primitive. This wasn't merely a fire pit, it was a carefully calculated heat distribution system. Positioned in the exact center of the main hall, the hearth radiated warmth in all directions, but the Vikings took it further. They lined these hearths with stones that possessed specific thermal properties, materials that would absorb heat during the day and continue radiating it through the long Arctic nights. Archaeological evidence shows that these stone-lined hearths, when properly stoked and bedded with ash insulation, could maintain radiant heat for up to 12 hours, meaning a single, well-managed fire could warm the entire household through a complete night-day cycle. The smoke hole system demonstrates an even more sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics and atmospheric pressure. Modern reconstructions have proven that these weren't simply holes cut in the roof. They were precisely positioned ventilation systems that created a natural convection current. As warm air and smoke rose toward the roof opening, Cooler, fresh air was drawn in through carefully placed gaps near the floor and around doorways. This created a continuous circulation pattern that accomplished three critical survival objectives simultaneously. It expelled toxic carbon monoxide and smoke before dangerous concentrations could build. It provided constant fresh oxygen for both the fire and the inhabitants, and it established thermal layers within the space. The warmest air remained at chest and head height where people worked and socialized, while the coldest air pooled harmlessly at floor level. On winter nights, when temperatures outside dropped to -30 degrees Celsius or lower, the interior could maintain a survivable 15 to 20 degrees, a 40-degree temperature differential achieved through nothing but intelligent design and fire management. Beyond walls, building with the land itself. The Vikings understood a principle that, honestly, modern survivalists are only beginning to rediscover. Your environment is your greatest resource. When examining longhouse construction, we find that the structure isn't imposed upon the landscape, it emerges from it. The walls themselves tell this story. In regions where timber was plentiful, vertical planks or horizontal logs formed the primary barrier. But these wooden walls were rarely left exposed. Instead, Vikings packed the exterior with layers of turf, living earth complete with root systems that held it together like natural rebar. This wasn't primitive thinking. This was brilliant thermal engineering. A turf wall 3 feet thick could provide an R-value comparable to modern insulation, creating a thermal mass that buffered interior temperatures against wild exterior swings. In summer, the thick earthen walls absorbed heat during the day and kept interiors cool. In winter, they prevented precious warmth from bleeding into the frozen night. Standing in the ruins of a Viking longhouse today, running your hands over timbers that have endured for centuries, you're touching more than just ancient wood. You're connecting with a philosophy of survival that modern society desperately needs to remember. These structures weren't built by engineers with advanced degrees or access to global supply chains. They were raised by communities using only what their immediate environment provided, guided by generations of accumulated knowledge about their specific climate and conditions. Yet they achieved what many modern buildings cannot: genuine sustainability, true energy efficiency, and centuries-long durability. The lessons here transcend historical curiosity. As we face climate instability and increasing extreme weather events, the passive heating systems of the longhouse offer proven alternatives to energy-intensive modern climate control. The thermal mass principles that kept Vikings warm through polar winters can reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. The use of local renewable materials instead of resource-intensive manufactured products demonstrates a path toward truly sustainable construction. Even the communal living arrangement speaks to survival wisdom. The concentration of human activity and shared resources creates efficiencies that isolated modern homes can never achieve. Military history teaches us that the best warriors are those who can adapt any environment to their advantage, who can turn limitation into opportunity. The Vikings weren't great shipbuilders and warriors despite their harsh homeland. They were formidable because of it. The longhouse was their first tactical victory, the foundation upon which their entire civilization was built. It proved that with sufficient ingenuity, observation, and willingness to work with nature rather than against it, humans can not only survive but thrive in conditions that should by all rights be uninhabitable. The lost Tactician exists to uncover these timeless lessons, to show how historical survival strategies inform modern preparedness and resilience. If you found value in this deep dive into Viking architectural genius, honor their ingenuity by sharing this knowledge. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we continue exploring how the crucible of history forged techniques that could save lives today. The Vikings built for survival. What will you build?